Hey, thanks for coming to part 2 of this episode. If you want to find part 1, check the show notes below for a link, or click the info card at the top of the screen right now. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of the show.
And that's goes right back to the start of like being honest with yourself and what you are capable of and what you want out of your art career as well. Like not necessarily to match other people, just like you're your own service. Like what do you want out of this? Like how do you want to like approach it and how do you want to navigate it? Like what is going to give you the most fulfilling kind of career? Like what is going to put food on the plate? What is going to like pay the bills? And what's going to like put a smile on your face? Like there's like a really big thing is like, what are you going to enjoy the most about your art practice? And that's why I steer away from price sheets, is because that to me sounds really not fun. Like that sounds really crap.
So I know you have a pet peeve about price sheets, but my personal pet peeve is about commission slots. Do you have
Okay.
it's like artificial scarcity, but it also limits the number of people that can buy at any given time. Uh, and then people will be in a rush to fill up their 10 slots immediately as soon as they post, and they're not really gaining any benefit from having the slots be full at all. I'm just a little confused. Do you have any thoughts on why someone would actually want price slots or commission slots?
From what I know, I've never pushed out commissions. I think I've mentioned the word maybe once in one promotional post, but I've never like given a number. I would use it as a sales technique. I don't know, because an arbitrary amount of slots is it's if you have 5 slots, like that is also still an arbitrary amount of work. Like it doesn't really matter how many slots you have open. Like it's still going to take X amount of time that you have no idea until you get them.
Unless you have a very regimented, like these are the only kinds of things that I offer, and I know exactly how long each one of them takes.
Yeah, which
goes back to what you were saying. That sucks. Don't do that.
Sucks, and it's. I mean, like you, maybe for like the holidays you might do that. Like if you know, I don't know, they're the pork chops. Like they're the ones where it's just like, yep, I need some cash. I need to get some income, and I'm going to take advantage of this holiday, and I'm just going to promote just a good old portrait. You might do it for that. You could use it as a sales technique if you are someone who has a large following. I think it's and you don't often do private commissions, maybe, and you just want a bit of boost in cash. You could go, I've got X amount of slots open, because it's going to make people rush in. But if you are purely or mostly based off of commission work, you're probably shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. But I mean, that's hard selling. That is directly hard selling. That is, I'm making a demand and you need to fulfill it. Otherwise time will run out. And it starts off with like a negative connotation to me and doesn't provide like a happy experience. And puts you on like a pedestal that you probably don't need to be on. But I could see it working for people who do like private commissions sometime. And not that kind of work all the time.
There's an artist who comes to mind. They do amazing work, and they were undercharging for their work, and they only had limited slots with it. And they said, "Well, I can undercharge for this because one, I want the money right now, and two, it's limited, so I'm not doing this all the time." And in my head, I'm thinking, well, if you didn't undercharge, you don't need 10. You could just get 1 and have that filled out. So it just made no sense to me, and I was curious if there was anything that I was missing that you might know from your background, but it sounds like we're all on the same page that it's just not worth it.
No, it's not worth it, but like, we're also talking from people who have like roofs above their heads and rent that they can pay, and like I have a stable income outside of art as well, and so I don't have that direct need to have cash in my pocket at this very moment. I feel like actually a wanker standing here. with the suit on talking about that now. It's like, I'm still a struggling artist, people. Don't worry. I just look like this because I'm an idiot. I think
You just
like,
ruined the magic trick, man.
I did. I just
let us all
ruined it.
peek behind. We were all so confident in everything that you were saying.
Give me 5 minutes. I'm gonna go change into it. Like, hold on. Can I like look shorts? Everybody shorts. Yeah, I think there's probably a place for that. There's probably someone who needs like the money like now and then, and I don't think that's a practice that if you could get out of, it would be really good for you as an artist. If you're in a position where you kind of need to do that just to like get by, then who, like, what am I to say? Like, I can't help you with that. I think you could shift it slowly. If you are in that position where you're struggling to like kind of pay bills, but this works and exhausts you, I think you're better off trying to shift that slowly towards something more valuable to you. Because yes, you could just do one and then get paid for the whole 10, but likely you're going to get paid half up front and then half at the end, and then you're like, how do I pay for my meals in the middle? And that's fair. I think that's very fair. But ideally, I think you want to shift down to increasing the value of the work that you do to lend yourself to doing stuff that you like. And this goes back to like doing art that you want to do as well. Like going back to, what do I want to like actually draw? Do I want to do pet portraits? Do I want to do fantasy art? Do I want to do sci-fi art? Like, do I want to do really freaking good pet portraits? Like, if that's what you want to do, you're going to have to shift your value up eventually. And so any way that you can head towards that goal, whether it is immediately by changing what you're doing or slowly, I think it's just going to be beneficial for you as a person, your joy, and like the service that you give to customers. Because if you do take 10 commission slots, you are spending 10 times less time on each customer to like fulfill what they want and to fulfill kind of, I don't know, a really good service. Like, you're just going to be giving them less of a time where you can give them a lasting impression, I think.
While we're on this topic of price, maybe this might be a good spot to insert this. You live in Australia. Australia has not the lowest standard of living in the world, but it's the cost of living is a little bit lower than the States. And an objection that we hear often in this area is something along the lines of, I live in Indonesia or I live in Poland. It sounds crazy for me to charge $500, $600, $1,500. You name it, whatever above the $30 that I am charging for a commission. That just sounds crazy. So
that's fair. I think that's pretty fair.
Is that fair? Well, see, I was wondering if, being
There's
in your
parts to it, but yeah,
being in your position, living in a country that is Western, industrialized, higher standard of living, but the cost of living might be a little bit lower. Maybe you would have some thoughts on, like how that comparison, how we can think about that comparison between, artists that live in high cost of living areas compared to artists that live in much lower cost of living areas.
I think, we, for one, immediately forget our privileges of living in high cost of area places. Like a lot of the low cost area places don't have a lot of privileges that we have immediately in terms of living arrangements and actually just the public safety and public health and all that sort of stuff that we kind of get for living in the high cost. So we need to, as people, just take into account that first. And it's not fair to immediately go, you should be on our level, because that makes it hard for us, right? I don't think that's a great platform to start that conversation at all. I think the best way is to try and understand where they're coming from I think for an artist who does that, what I would say to you as advice, so that you're capitalizing on as much as you can as an artist, because your art value is, still here, even though you only have to cost here or charge here. I mean, you could be living the dream. Maybe my suggestion would be to put your price there locally. Find out a way that you can appeal locally, and to those places, and do your work locally in that price range, that lower price range, and then your online stuff. Like, I don't deal with Australian customers otherwise, only if they're local. Like, that's it. And then I charge them my local rate, and that is completely different to what I'm charging, in my
Internet
online
dollars,
rate.
yeah.
My internet dollars, because like my internet dollars are in US, and that's where a lot of my customers come from, or they come from US or the UK, who have more dollars to be able to throw around, I guess. Will have more internet dollars to throw around. The dollar is worth less to them than it is to the other person.
It just seems like it would be bad practice to even do local customers if they're paying less whenever possible.
Well, I mean, to them, their local customer is like the value that they're charging now online. Like, that's what I mean. Like, if they're going to charge $30 for a commission, and that $30 pays their rent for the month or the rent for 2 weeks, I think that's fair. Like, do that to your local customers. But like, you're just missing out on work. You're just missing out on value. Like, I just don't see any point. Yeah, you might be getting a stack of commissions and being like, yeah, I'm earning like a lot more money, but it just goes back to the exact same part of like, your value is still up here and you're just missing out on that. Like, you're just missing out on that. Like, we online, it does not matter where we are from. Like, your value is here and the dollar is here, and it's usually the US dollar, and you are able to make that more money if you want to. Like, if you don't want to, you're underselling yourself on to your online customers, and you're giving yourself a service that is just like not very useful for you in the long term, because like, you don't know how like long your value is going to stay the same online. Your dollar in your local economy might change quite a lot because of political reasons, and then you kind of now shot yourself in the foot, where you can't afford to pay rent off of these 30 things because something politically or economically has happened that has changed that completely. And now that you bump your prices up 200%, you lose all of your customers. It's like, you could just be there anyway and just do it, because there's nothing stopping you at all. Because as I mentioned before, doing the 10 for 30 or 1 for 300, it's like, it's the same amount of dollars, but to me feels much more like they just come as often as the other one does. Like, yeah, you're just kind of setting yourself up for like more work and failure in your future, and not a long lasting like service that you can provide, I think.
Yeah, you said something that I'm glad you said, because I didn't want to put it in the question and put words in your mouth and like try and lead it out of you. But that idea of, once you're online, you're in a global market, and at that point your competition isn't gauged in local dollars. It's what the industry standards are. And if you haven't done yourself the service of figuring out what the industry standards are and lifting yourself to that standard, then you're just allowing yourself to be exploited in a sense, and I mean, at this point, everybody understands the atrocity of sweatshops, and we know what that is. So don't put yourself in your own little one-person sweatshop. It's like, don't when you're in the global economy and doing something like commissions online, that's your opportunity to
be
escape.
The exploiter. Be that exploiter. Like, if
I mean,
we
in a
lived
sense,
in that kind of country, like, what you are doing is bringing more like economically speaking, you're doing a fantastic job for your country if you charge more. You're
Right.
bringing in more dollars
Oh.
into your own local economy
Awesome.
and boosting it up from just exploiting the countries that have too much money. And like, go for it. Like, as someone who is Australian, like, yeah, we can afford to pay more for someone. If you get an Australian person who wants a commission from you and you're in Indonesia, or you're in like a country that does not need to charge much more, exploit the crap out of us. Like, go for it. Like, you're not having any negative effect on them, and they do not care where you come from. And I think you should do that 100%, because it's going to improve your life in the future. It's going to improve your economy in the future globally, and it's all it's also going to locally, and it's also going to improve the lives and economy and service of other artists in your local area and across the world as well. Because ideally, it'd be great if it was just, one flat line. It's not like that, obviously, but you can have that positive influence on the world from where your perspective is. And you don't know, like, if you do live in a country like that, you deserve to exploit people in that regard. And exploit is quite a terrible word for it, but
Reverse
like,
exploitation.
you don't have some of the privileges that those other countries have. And so you need to pay extra for things like healthcare and access to medication and access to safety and access to other things that may be not as comparable in the countries that we live in as a Western society. So go for it. Like, you need that money. Like, go for it. Just take it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And yeah, you're setting yourself up for what we've already talked about. You're just losing the value.
So
and
with
if that does change, you're in a kind of a crap position then.
Well, so with that in mind, going back to something that you said kind of at the beginning in your immediate response to my first question about there are some things that we need to keep in mind, in highly advanced Western industrial civilization about the luck of the spot of ground that we were born on. Some people get triggered by the word privilege, so I'll try and avoid that and just say that the luck of the draw, being born where we were born. There's some sensitivity that we can have, to people that live in less fortunate places, and the place and their outlook on how they're going to charge. What is some language that we, as Western industrialized high standard of living, what is some language that we can use to better engage that conversation so it doesn't come off as you have to raise your prices for my benefit?
Exactly. Like, that's really hard. Like, that's a solution that I don't know, I guess, too
fair.
much. But I think, like, it's going to start with the conversation. Like, just open that conversation with those artists. If you have artist friends who are in that community and do charge that much, get a more understanding of their position. Like, understand like what their life is like and compare it to your own, and have that honest conversation about it. And maybe they adversely don't see the reason why they need to, obviously. But you might be like, oh, well, I've got this in my life as a guarantee, and I don't have to pay for it, or it's pretty cheap for me. I think finding that common ground and then expressing that is going to be the key part about learning how to communicate that positively, by showing what those only privileged people are going to get triggered by the word privilege. Sorry, I had to put it out. But what those kind of benefits that we have, like, maybe we just need to unpack them a little bit more in a conversation and actually realize what they are. Like, I mean, these are some of the things, having this conversation with you, I feel like even just thinking about this now is something I'd be like, oh gosh, I really want to talk to like another artist who's like that. I really want to understand that a little bit more now, because I actually don't know. This is kind of like some of the first times I'm thinking about this kind of thing. I've always had some sort of like latent kind of understanding, I guess, of that, or just latent, just, I don't know, just assumption that, okay, life is different there, so I can't be too harsh. But just, I think, opening that conversation with your artist friends, I think that that's up to us as artists as well, to find that solid ground, because maybe there's ways that we can, us in that kind of more advanced Western world, can assist with that to make it easier, so it's less of a competition. Because sometimes it feels like that.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like a competition.
It feels like they have an easy. What I've experienced with them having these conversations is that they think that this is their way to get easier work and more work at those prices. And what I point, sorry to cut you off with this, but I've had this conversation a whole lot. I help run a subreddit that is for artists who charge a certain amount, and you've helped me with this as well, Sam. You've seen the document already. So the way I go about it is pointing out, one, how much their peers are charging for this sort of work, for their level of work, how much they can make in this industry. And then, their mind is blown that they can make 10 times as much per drawing. And they realize then they can draw less or make more or somewhere in between. And when it's seen as their benefit to do so, they can at least try it for a month or 2 months to charge more, see how much work they get at those prices, and they might be surprised, because there's a whole lot of more people making $100,000 or more per year than the average person thinks. Because just because, quote unquote, I am not making $100,000 doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people out there that aren't, and that those are typically the people that are going to be hiring you. So the people that are making a bit less are the ones that are going to be the more low budget customers that have high expectations and low budgets. So those are the people who aren't going to be hiring you anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's also to say, like, this globalization of the industry over the past like 10 to 15 years is been really beneficial, and has allowed access for these people to have some sort of kind of easy income to make doing something that's quite enjoyable. And that again, once, is very fair. Like, sure, like, if this is awesome for you because you charge $30 for a commission, like, makes sense to me. But like, hey, we're probably at that point where we could just make this better for you. Like, and it's not gonna have a negative effect on your life or on your own industry and your own services as a person. You could either slowly take that step or do it for 1 month. And this is like, goes back to price lists, and like also talking about price early on in the conversation, both things that I think are not great. Like, once again, like, that person doesn't need to know where you're from and what a meal costs. Like, they don't necessarily, they're after an image. Like, so like, both of those two things are like negatively gearing you. Like, it'd be really interesting if one of those artists with like a ton of followers just like kind of threw away all history of what prices they used to cost and charge, and just kind of worked for a couple of months on that basis of communicating and understanding, and like focus on that kind of way of service. And they might like receive a lot less commissions, but I mean, they've kind of done a groundwork that a lot of artists over here would never be able to do. So it's kind of some sort of advantage in some respect. So they're going to have like a larger following, they're going to have produced a lot of art, and they're going to have a lot of positive reviews. Ignoring the price, those are 3 things that I wish I bloody had. Like, that would be great. And you can just focus on those 3 things and use those to your advantage, because no one, if you remove the evidence, is going to care about that. And there might be an initial kind of drop, but if you can find a way around that, that would be fantastic for you, I feel like absolutely fantastic for you. So maybe we can do things as Western cultures to promote them so they don't have to fear that drop as much. Maybe that's where we should step in and help out and be like, all right, this is a risk that they take and it's a very real risk on their well-being. Sorry, Gabby.
Oh, I don't want to cut you off if you were pausing.
No.
Well, one of those efforts is that subreddit that Moose was talking about, and I don't know, some of the thanks that you get for trying to make that effort is being called the art mafia.
Well, I mean, we have like that is a part of it. Like
Right.
that is right part to this back to the start of like we are assuming we understand. And so we need to aim to understand more.
And so since we're kind of like on a good roll of doing a little bit more to promote more understanding, there's another oft heard refrain in this conversation, which is that if I raise my prices, I'm not going to get any clients. Do you have any thoughts on a response to that?
I mean, that I think you go back to like going right back to the start of like be honest with what you're capable of, not in terms of price, like what you're capable of your art and like what you can achieve with your art and where your art skill is at. Like if you can honestly look at it and be like, okay, I'm here, I can equate myself roughly to these kind of sorts of artists, and that's really hard to do. It's really, really, really difficult to do. And it's probably best that you get some outside perspective on that from friends or other artists. But being honest about like what you are capable of producing as an artist is a good place to start. Because like, I don't know, we also as artists don't often talk about how much we charge between each other, other than in private conversations. So maybe we need to be a bit more public about that to each other. So then people don't fear it, because it's not very true, I don't think. Like, as someone who has slowly raised their price over the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't had less work. I don't know. I feel like I have actually had, as someone, to be quite honest with you, my price point has been higher than my skill. And that might be a lot of me projecting onto that, but there is, I think, some truth to that, because I know I can charge more because of my sales pitch. I know I give someone probably better service in terms of how they feel about the service and the situation, the product, than a lot of other artists. And I've used that to my advantage to make more money, like directly charge more than other artists. I'm probably realistically charging the right amount. And then generally artists charge less. And that's probably what's going on. But my experience in business and sales has led me to that. And I think if you are afraid of raising your prices, test it out. See what a customer who approaches you with. Like, if you get 5 to 10 people bugging you about commissions a month because you've got lower prices, like, take one risk and see what happens. Take two, like, just take it. Just be like, all right, I'm going to try it with this one person who I think has probably got a little bit more money because of how they speak or what they're saying, or they're not like too concerned about price. They say like price is not an issue. Like, a lot of people say that. Like, a lot of people say that to me. Like, price, don't worry about the price. It's not an issue. I just want to ballpark on how it feels. All right, chuck another $200 on there, double it. Like, see what they say. Like, I've definitely been in this situation where someone has said to me, like, I just want to pay you fairly. And so I've given them a figure and they've put it up. Like, I've given them a figure higher than what I wanted, essentially. And they have gone, I reckon we can make it this much. Like that is happened more than once. And
you're living in a
like,
different
that
part of
was
the
me.
simulation, bro. I don't. This is.
But am I?
I
No,
don't.
Like these people are your neighbors and stuff like that. They're people out there who there is
Yeah.
unfortunately the realistic thing is, and I'm saying this to bloody everyone, there are so many people out in the world with way too much money and they need to give it to you. Like that is the fact. As someone who sells suits, at one point I sold suits that started at $3,500,
Mhm.
right? I have been in situations where people have walked in and spent tens of thousands of dollars on clothing because they were bored. Like, I need that to be realistic. They were bored and they spent tens of thousands of dollars on clothing that they did not need in any way. And that still happens today in this global pandemic. Those people have made more money this time round through a global pandemic. They have not been in the same situation that a lot of you, me, and everyone else have been in. They have excelled and made more money. There is nothing wrong with taking more money from them at all. Obviously, offer them a good service, but like they got money, especially if you're doing D&D. If you're doing D&D,
Mhm.
a lot of rich bored people play D&D. Like
Yeah.
it's just like people who do D&D just have tons of money, and that's fine. Squeeze it from them, ring them to death, make them worry about how much they're paying for. If you can get to the point where they feel uncomfortable about how much they're paying to you and they have plenty of money in their bank account, you've done a good job, I think, for the world.
Well, this echoes
So
a comment that we saw earlier in the chat from Daria that I think is very true. Art is a luxury. You know, it's a luxury item, and you should be proud to be able to provide a luxury service or a luxury item to people. You have a very unique set of skills. It took you a long time to hone them to the point where you can put them on display for people and charge money for that skill. It's totally okay for you to take pride in the fact that that is worth gold bricks. Own that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
to bring this back to art real quick, follow that up is with the idea of not knowing how much the person's budget is. There were two people in our group, two artists that we know, and they had ended up with the same client at the exact same time. One artist got paid $2,000 for it, and the other person got paid $500 for it, just because of their negotiations. One artist was able to say, "Hey, if you get this much more, if you get wings, if you get dragon, if you get a background, it'll be this much more." And the guy just kept saying yes, yes, yes. And in the other guy's case,
I think I know who you're talking about.
they said $500, and I'll give you what you want. And then the guy said, "Okay." So the client was just relying entirely on what the artists asked for for the price. He might have gone higher. Maybe $2,000 was his cap for anything. Maybe his total budget was $2,500, but we don't know. What we do know is that one got paid 4 times more than the other person for the same amount of work.
Yep. That's pretty realistic. And that just explains right then and there. I feel like we don't know their budget, but I think we can make some sort of like basic assumptions that that person just has a ton of money and just wanted to spend what they were being asked to spend for the image, because I almost think I know probably who you're talking about, and the client, it's themselves. And yeah, you just like, you don't know, you really don't know how much money people have, and it's not fair for you to assume that you do, because one, yeah, you're just going to miss out on yourself, and two, they're going to take advantage of you. Like they're going to take advantage of that item. Like I have a little bit of a disagreement on the word luxury about art, because I feel like in this pandemic we've proved that entertainment is it's a luxurious item to be able to afford sometimes, but it is also a very integral part of human nature, and that we need to continue being able to have access to as well. Commissions fit a little bit differently than that, but I think entertainment itself is not purely luxury. But
That's fair.
another
I mean,
conversation.
that's fair. I could modify the statement, from just saying art in a general sense, to the acquisition of a private piece of art
There you
in
go.
in a
I think that's
personal
fair.
contractual
Yep.
kind of condition.
Yeah. That's
Well,
how I would frame it. Yeah.
we don't have a whole lot of time left, but that does kind of segue into our next topic, which was company projects. So how, if at all, do you negotiate differently with clients that are for commissions versus corporate or are they the same?
I think there's a lot of similarities. Of course, how you are as a client to them is going to reflect how much work you receive from them in the future. So when you're starting to work with bigger clients for like book covers, like publishers and book covers, there's actually a lot of information out there for artists in artist communities to be able to access. Like, what should you be paying for this? What should you be charging? Because directly there's like a lot of big publishers that expect to pay this amount of money for their cover, and that's usually like $3,000 to $5,000. If they're a part of like the big five, I think they call it. I think that's actually reduced down now to like 2 or even 3 because of acquisitions and stuff like that. I'm not sure. But generally, if they're from those like publishers, like they're expecting to pay like $3,000 to $5,000 depending on your experience. Like, so that you're charging this much. And the best way to do that is to get into art communities. And if you're at that point in your art skill where you're working for corporations and bigger clients like that, you probably want to make it a part of your like life that you're accessing those communities and speaking to other professionals as you would in any other industry, for sure. Obviously, you're still talking to another person on the end of the line. And so how you act and how friendly you are, you want to be a great person to work with because that is how you secure more work. There are a lot of corporations out there who undercharge but have a good big following. It's very hard to be like, don't work for them because you're not getting paid enough. Like Fantasy Flight Games, I think, is one of them, and others like who just undercharge like massively. Like they're just like, you're talking about like $150 for like a full character commission thing. And I'd say like, yeah, if you want some wicked names on your thing, maybe do a couple of them. Sure, that makes sense. But like, I've seen artists and go through and like work for them for a really long time and how it affects their like mental kind of state as an artist. They go, it's stable income and I know what to expect and I can just do this thing, but gosh, I hate it. Like, that doesn't sound like a career that you want to pursue for your life. Like, there's enough private commissions out there that you don't really need to do that. I'll be honest with you, there are enough. Like, if you spent, and this is the one thing that we haven't really touched on, but in any client you deal with, if the value is not there for you to want to do it, you are much better off spending that time on a personal piece to go into your folio or your skills, because then you're upgrading your skills. Because a lot of commissions, people get under this like false assumption. Rarely do your commissions allow you space to improve as an artist that much, especially as much as a private piece. So yeah, there's that. Also back to the like working with corporations things, you probably want to read up on how to do like contracts, or how like contracts look. Don't ever ignore a contract. Read it from start to finish. Get some advice from friends. Feel free to speak to a corporation about that contract if they have something in there that's not making any sense to you. Be clear. Ask questions. That's going to make you look more professional. It's not going to make you look silly or dumb. It's going to make you look like you give a crap about your job. Like, that's one thing a lot of people do, is they just ignore the fine line because they're like, oh, whatever. Like, no, question it. Like, go, what does this mean? Like, tell me, explain to this what this means and what you expect. Give me a date. Give me exact figures. Like, you're a professional. You be a professional to me. I'll be a professional to you back. Have some sort of respect like that. But other than that, if you've set yourself up really well with good personal skills and you've practiced those with your private commissions and that sort of stuff, it's going to be the same skills that you pass over into bigger clients. It's going to be more of a focus on addressing that, though, and being very specific about that so you can get the most value out of your work, because there will be an expectation that you can perform professionally. There won't be that lack of expectation. It will definitely be there, and it will definitely have an impact on whether or not you do future work with them or whether or not you close the sale. And closing the sale is something I haven't really talked much about, but it's also very important to do, is to secure that sale. Make the assumed statement. Once you feel like you're at the point where you know what price it is, you know what you need to do, go, all right, let's get this going. I'll get it done by you. Is this all good? You get that yes? You get that final yes? You're good. Close sales. Like, that is really important. Otherwise, you're going to spend 25 emails not doing work and wasting your time. And corporates will want you to close the sale real quick. So be concise. So yeah, I think
Is that a matter of is that a matter of like signing a contract, or is that a matter of sending an invoice, or what is quote unquote closing a sale?
Just getting that yes. Like, I don't think signing the invoice and that sort of stuff is like, you could close the sale before that. Close the sale is getting the agreed yes. Just being like, this is happening, and like, you can be very clear on what's going on. There comes a point where like nice person almost shuts off. You can still keep it there to continue, but it's like all right, like, you can see in a lot of my emails back and forth with people, it'll be like, and then you'll be like, all right, this is where it is, and this is how much you pay, and this is the link that you pay into, and this is, you need to pay this exact amount, and it'll just be like this paragraph of this, and this, and then you'll usually either see the money in your account or yes, it will be paid on this date, and that's a closing of the sale. Obviously, there's that little bit of ambiguity until that money actually rolls into your account, but that is what closing the sale means, is not fuffing around anymore and agreeing to something. Getting paid for something is not really closing the sale. It's just getting paid for it. Closing the sale is like a skill. Hold on one sec. The queen needs to be let out.
The queen is his cat, Mika.
For everybody listening, yeah. The cat is a worthy interruption.
Worthiest.
So, I do have a question about budgets of companies. I know when we talked about commission clients, you try to find out their budget last, but with a company, do you try to find out first? Because are they more or less likely to have a flexible budget, or are they more or less going to?
They're not likely to have a flexible budget at all. They're likely to know exactly how much money they're allowed to spend. A lot of this for me comes in with the local work that I do. So I do a lot of work with councils and things like that around art and performance art in terms of projection work. And I always know that they know exactly how much money they've got. And I want to find out. They want to try and get it. Depending on who your client is, they either want to spend that whole amount of budget or they want to keep it as much as possible. If you're working with like government bodies and local organizations, like, try and push to find out how much money they got, because they probably want to spend it all. And that's great. Like, charge them through the roof. If they've got it, try and find it out ASAP. But you need to show that value. Like, you need to express that value either at the same time you're asking for the budget or before you're asking for the budget. So just never ever skip that step of value. And that step of value in a corporate client will be how you professionally act and what you have produced before. And that's all it will be. So it's like how you're interacting and what you have previously produced, which is probably something that they've already seen, or are already ready for that. So you're probably not going to get that work unless you produce the quality of work that they are expecting and looking for, because they're not going to be like, let's look for a subpar artist to find something to fill this. They're not going to do that. Corporate people don't do that. Like, that's just not how they work. But yeah, that value for the budget is always super important. But yeah, they might come from different places. But the one thing that remains the same is how you act and how you push your truth and push your own value, I think, if that answers the question. You got any more?
Yeah, Joby had a question, but I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Well, it was something that you were kind of touching on in the first part of Moose's question about, corporate clients. But if you could expand a little bit more on, is there a, and when you're dealing with corporations, is there a corporate equivalent, of the conversation that you were talking about with like pet portraits, like, oh, tell me more about what kind of pet this was. Obviously, that's not a conversation that you can have with an art director or, whatever corporate contact you have. So what's the, is there still room for finessing that relationship with, with a more corporate kind of client?
I think that is where your history of work comes into play, and how you act and how concise you are. So if you're immature and you don't speak about what's going on, like, they don't have a lot of time in their day, so value that. If you're unaware they don't have a lot of time in their day and you're messing around and not like getting back to them, that's going to annoy the crap out of them. So understanding their position is probably that, I would say. Your previous work, and then understanding what they need to achieve and working with them to achieve that goal, because they usually are not the person you're making the art for. They're hiring you to make an art, so you want to be on their side. And so being on their side in this process of producing it, being on time, like giving your sketches in on the right time, doing thumbnails, assuming like, do you need thumbnails for this, or a sketch, and by what date do you need that completed by, and then what date do you need this by? Have your things set up and ready to go for them is probably the best way you can do it. And that's probably the biggest difference is, so I don't know, a corporate client's not likely going to be asking you how much you're going to charge for something that much. They're going to assume you know already, or they're going to give you a flat price.
What you were talking about, it sounds like
negotiate from that.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I was going to say, it sounds like what you were saying is identifying how you can make their job easier. That's sort of like the linchpin for corporate client.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And that job, like the person you're dealing with specifically, like, as I said, there's still another person on the end of that email chain or that phone call, or however you deal with it. Appeal to them. Don't appeal to them personally. Appeal to their job, making it easier and making it smooth. And be a trusting person who's going to work with them to achieve that task.
So instead of asking them to talk about their cat, the personality of their pet, you say concise statements. You try to keep the email short and to the point.
Yeah, or just like directly answering what they're talking about, and maybe making assumed questions for questions they might have in the future that you might expect from them. So you jumpstart the conversation about deadlines and when like sketches need to be handed in, and like if you're foremost the one starting that conversation and it's of value to them, then that's an email they don't have to send. You've cut out an email that they've had to send, and they just need to answer you, and that's really helpful for them. So if you can be like really quick on that, and that's usually probably only after you've worked with them once or twice, you can make some assumptions, but trying to shorten the amount of time that they need to explain things to you and coming across as someone who already understands, or giving them two really quick options of, is it this or this? And even if it's neither of those, they go, it's this. That's like, that is going, okay, you've made an assumption that it's either this or this. That's fine. It's neither of those. It's this. It's still cutting out an email in the middle. So you're making their life much easier. And
But with
job much easier.
with commissions, you suggested to start with getting 3 yeses, but with to build a rapport. With a corporate client, it seems like if you're asking them obvious questions that you already know the answer is going to be yes, that you're wasting their time. So should you not try to do that?
Yeah, I guess you just want to move the conversation along, is where I think it's probably the difference. Is you're not wasting their time. You want to just be like, okay, we're sorry, this is the cat maker. We're not at that point in the conversation. You don't need to explain all of this to me. I get it.
This isn't the first time
She's gonna knock
cats have
over
taken
my
over the
light.
podcast. Don't worry.
I think there is that difference between them just having to say yes. Obviously, just start with end with a follow-up question. So you've made an assumption, they'll correct you if you're wrong, and then continue the conversation, and lead on to continue the conversation onto the next part, like invoices. Like, all right, this is what you need by this day. You don't need to get too many yeses out of them as much as you would with a personal client. I don't think. They don't really care about that. They know you can achieve the job. They know that you can do what you're doing. You just want to affirm that for them, really. So it's not as emotionally invested into the piece of art as a personal person is, because it's not their money, it's their company's money, and it's not their pet. And so don't worry about the reason.
I just have to point out, just for anybody that's listening, Sam isn't maniacally laughing for no reason. The cat is totally taking over his microphone stand, and
I'm having to hold on to it.
It's quite.
What's up, Mika?
Quite charming.
So before we wrap up, the last question I have on the list that I think we should get to more than others. I know we've talked about this topic before, where a lot of people have dream clients like Magic the Gathering or Riot or whatever the case may be, and they aren't there yet, but they still need work from either commissions or corporate clients. But you had mentioned other alternative ways of getting corporate client work, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about them before. So if you have any thoughts on, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the biggest one is local work. There are so many businesses around you that will give you that experience and will pay you really well, and you have access to, and you are now not a drop in an ocean. You're like this shining gem in your area. Local businesses love working with local businesses. That is because it builds their local economy and it builds their local trust. Access the businesses around you. The government bodies as well pay really, really well. Collaborate with different types of artists. See if you can get involved with you have skills that you can educate people on. You have skills that you can provide for people. You can paint something on someone's restaurant wall. You can go outside of your comfort zone with the art a little bit and do some things that are sorry, Mika, she needs attention. You can do things that you might not have ever done before. I do, as I mentioned, projection art. And so I sit on a street and draw portraits that I would never share with any of you online because they are awful. But they're of children that I've done in 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And so a 10-minute portrait where you're sitting in front of kids who are trying to move around and it's getting projected onto a massive building pays far better than every other art commission I've ever done. Ever. And a lot of that is not art skills. A lot of that is personal skills and getting those jobs. And they're going to teach me how to deal with corporations, and they're going to teach me how to do contracts. They're going to teach me how to deal with people even more. And they're going to break outside of your comfort zone. They're also going to provide an income that isn't directly just doing what you normally do as an artist. Like, artists are really valuable in your community, and like, look at other artists in your community and reach out to them. As I guarantee you, there'll be a lot of other artists in your community talking to each other and working together, and you can go join them in that. And they usually earn much more money than a lot of us do, because gosh, like, places like libraries like to buy paintings from local artists, and they'll charge thousands. And you'd be like, sweet, I'll just do a portrait study of something on some oils for fun and sit it in somewhere, and they'll be like, I love that piece of art. And then they'll buy it. Because they got budgets to fill. And people usually want to fill those budgets. They want to spend every dime, because if they don't spend every dime, then the next year that budget goes down instead of going up.
In a scenario like that, which comes first, like the painting of the portrait study or whatever, or the request by a corporate client or a public client to get it from you? If you're going to get something to hang in a hospital or a library, do you are you showing that work around, or are you trying to get hired?
You need to have to get stuff for that. You need to have a name for yourself in your local area, and that's probably going to happen after a while. So it's good to start now with that sort of stuff. I've literally had. I was in a youth center, and I had access to a studio at the back, and literally someone from the local library was doing a talk, and they were also in the back of their head looking for art. They didn't come into the studio, and I had a portrait study that I did in oils when I was learning oils in the studio, sitting up there, and that got sold for like $1,200. And it was just sitting there, and they were just like, great, I could buy it. Yeah. And I got a call from my person there, and he's like, do you want to sell this piece? I'm like, go for it, whatever, don't care. Like, I could sell it for $50 and I wouldn't care, because it was literally sitting there and I was going to paint over it. So they're going to happen vice versa, depending on how well known you are and who you know. A lot of that is who you know, so get involved with them. And there's a lot of people in the middle there that want to access you. So there's a lot of people who have access to the money and want to get local artists. There's a lot of businesses who want to not order something online and want a local artist to come in and do it. Like, so go to a coffee shop, sit down, do some drawing, and be like, I'm a local artist, I do this. Do you guys want to do any? I got some artwork. Do you want some artwork? To like, look on their walls, see what they have on their walls. Like, start that conversation. It sounds super scary, but like, get into it. Like, it's not going to be that scary as well. Like, and you might not be able to talk to people in person that well, but like, your skills are going to show a lot, and they're going to want to work with you like a lot of the time. And just like, figure out what that price point is at, because usually it's just so high, and it's really great to do. It's really, really great. And you get to do things that you never expect you do as well. I think that's a lot of artists like don't ever access, is like their local. If your local is like what mine is like, it's full of opportunities, and you just get to do cool stuff, and it breaks up the monotony as well. So like, yeah, councils are a really great place to start. Literally the businesses on the roads that you live on, and the suburbs you live in. Like, you got to go in there and you've got to speak to people and be friendly. And that's how you get access to it.
Daria in chat mentioned that their local art societies often have a job list that you can get on.
Yep, absolutely. You don't want to just jump onto that this is the thing about local. You want to be known as a person, and known as that person. You want your face, who you are. You want your personality out there. You probably want to include it as a part of your website as well, or an affiliated website to those local governments. A lot of those local governments, you can go on and be like, hey, I'm an artist. Send me any opportunities coming up. Go to workshops that are free. Get involved with people, speak to people there. It takes a little bit of effort to kind of get around that, but the job listings will help. But if they know who you are or someone else knows who you are, like that's just going to speak worlds in that kind of area. If you get a recommendation from someone in your local, you've almost got the job. Like that is the best part about it. It is
Yeah.
so valuable.
A big part of working with somebody is knowing that they're not going to be a jerk, right?
Yep.
It's just that
Yep.
that low bar to clear. It sounds very minimal, but nobody wants to work with a jerk, and they don't know you're a jerk or not until they have at least some interaction with you or a relay of the interaction with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once again, they think you do magic, right? They think you do magic. You do magic to them. So go with your magic folio and be like, hey, I'm Samuel. Nice to meet you. I live around the corner. I'm a local artist. This is some of my work. I'd love to work with you guys. Do you have anything coming up? If not, cool. I love your coffee that you sell. I love the t-shirts that you sell and the brand that you put out here. I kind of want to be a part of it. Like that's it. Like you'll be surprised what the response is. It might be no, not right now. But like they'll speak to another business or something will come up or like your name will get spread. Like you have to put yourself out there for that stuff a lot. And the moment you start, it's like going around and handing in your resume at a store. But if you do it with a big smile on your face, you're doing it with something that you are a magician at. You're not like everyone else. Like you are standing out to them because whilst there are a lot of artists on the internet, you put those pins on a map locally, it starts to spread out. Yeah. It starts to really like you start to become one of a few. And if you can talk to those other few as well, you'll usually help each other.
Is there a way that people can do this interaction during COVID season when everyone else is in America especially, where or some places in Europe where the outbreak is still going on?
I think you need to be a bit more creative how you're doing it. Like at the moment, like this is something I'm saying that work has dropped phenomenally over the last 12 months. Like literally it was about 60% of my income. It's now less than 10. So what I'm saying is obviously when we get back into the norm, but that norm may not like happen again. So you need to be creative and forward thinking for these ideas. And you might need to start building positions for yourself in these things. Like if you have an idea of how to access art in your public space by being publicly distanced and promoting that, like promoting public distance. I literally was driving home yesterday. There's art all along Melbourne, the town I'm in, and it's about us going back into being Melbourne again. And it's all art. It's all visual art. People want to see that. People can sit and if you're in a city, like I can sit and see things from like outside my window being projected. Projection art is something that is coming up in a lot of spaces, and there's not a lot of artists out there doing it. So if you have anyone who has access to a projector, you'll likely find that companies want to project things onto buildings because they don't have to pay for a permit. 2, you can whip it down in a few seconds and it's like a cool hologram. So like that's a really big field that I'm a part of, and it pays a lot of money, and you can go corporate as hell with that sort of stuff and sell yourself out a little bit if you want to. Go for it. There's you're gonna just have to be creative, and that's one of the most exciting parts about it. Is you get to decide how to put art out there, and if your idea is good and you are convincing enough to the businesses that you're approaching, you'll be able to experiment a lot and do really cool things. So you might not get heaps of it right now, but there's like businesses still want to survive, and they're looking for new ways on how to get their word out there. So if you have an idea, don't be afraid to run it by someone, for sure.
I've stood in a lot of lines, that required me to stand 6 feet away from each other since all this started, and it's making me wonder how many local businesses might be interested in a floor mural that's based on 6 feet of distance between people.
Yeah.
And
that's only going to ever happen, if you go to that business and go, hey, like I lined up for your thing. I'm a local artist. I noticed like we have to stand here. Wouldn't it be wicked if we did a floor mural? Can we work together on that? That's the conversation. They know it's going to cost money. Like they should know it's going to cost money. Like they're a business. They're not expecting things for free.
Starbucks.
A lot of those franchises have money to spend on their marketing and are looking at different ways to be creative with it. You're exactly right. That is an opportunity to earn thousands of dollars. Like literally. The best part, I have to say, the best part I get when I do projection work and I sit there in front of like young kids and draw their faces, a lot of them have been told that being an artist is like a bad way to make money by their parents. And I get to sit there whilst their parents stand behind them and be like, guess how much money I'm making right now? Thousands of dollars. And their parents are like, don't put that into my child's head. And I'm like, you put them in front of me. This is my space. I'll do it. And that is honestly the best part about it, because you get to go, yes, this is a viable career. And there are interesting ways that you can do it.
And look how much fun I'm having doing it.
Exactly. And it's really refreshing as an artist to do a bunch of different stuff like that, I think. Well, for me personally, it is. So even though my goal may be, to do some magic art in the future, my goal now is to just continue doing art in really fun, different ways, even if it includes doing magic art or D&D art or book covers or whatever. I won't ever steer away from doing this other public stuff because it's too much fun and it pays too well. Like, why would I bother? You can do it all. Why not? That's what I think.
Very cool, man. I think we might be closing in on it. Can we ask you our final question?
Yes.
What's one thing in the world right now that you're excited about, Sam?
Can it be like anything? Does it have to be art related?
Anything at all, man.
My sister is about to have a baby. And
was that it? Did we just hear it?
Uncle. Yeah, I think so. God, that would be frightening. I'm about to become an uncle for the first time, and I am so excited. I'm so excited because like I'm going to spoil the crap out of this child and make it play tons of video games and do art too. Like I cannot wait. That is the most thing I'm excited about right now.
It's all the joys of having a kid without having to have a kid.
I've prepared her. I was like, are you ready for chaos? And she's like, outside of the house. I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm excited. That's what I'm most excited about. I cannot stop thinking about it every day. And it's like less than 2 weeks we're talking about.
Dang.
So.
Oh, well, send our congratulations along.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
We actually have another surprise. I think Sam already knows this, but the next podcast we have is with a good friend of his. His nemesis, not his good friend.
Sorry,
not his good friend. His nemesis. Yes, that's right. They don't have epic rap battles or anything.
Can I announce him?
Yeah, you can do that.
Cool. Next time on the Art Condition podcast, you will be seeing Paul Canavan, the Magic the Gathering artist, D&D artist, Axis art director. What else has he done? He's done a lot of stuff, and he's an absolutely fantastic person. He's one of the reasons why I still do art today and have gotten better to this day. Guarantee you, listen to this podcast coming up with Paul Canavan, because he has a lot of fantastic stuff to say, and he has a lot of experience, and he's a wonderful person.
Yeah, that will be this Sunday. So our Art Condition picks up right up where it left off, and it's regularly scheduled time this Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Man, Sam, thank you so much for being with us. I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours. There was a lot of unacknowledged back and forth between you and Daria, who was in the chat. And I think that it would be really fun if you were into it. Daria is a great person. I think it would be great to have you guys on and have both of you guys
Absolutely.
chatting together. We're going to try and smooth Daria into being on by herself at least once before that. So we'll keep that in mind. And until then,
Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
It's been a
Both of you.
blast, man. It's been such a great time. I'm going to wave goodbye and I'm going to hit end on the record.